Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Enhancing Your World show. I'm your host, Chris Alba. My co host, Larkin, will be on to join shortly. And today we are talking about uh, how to break free from the matrix. You know, this this self-imposed, what is the matrix, right? So if I was to use my words on what I believe it is. It is the uh, mental, emotional, and cultural conditioning that we've created through our life that creates an identity of ourself and the world that um, we believe we're a part of. Um, and to escape the matrix is to break free of that. And there's so many different ways to break free of our limited perspectives of life. And some of the easiest ones are to travel to different countries to learn about other cultures, other times in history. This allows us to cultivate an outer of awareness beyond our own story, beyond our own memories, our experiences, what we believe to be true, what we've been told that's true, whether it's conscious or unconscious, and or subconscious, right? And that is part of the healing that helps liberate us beyond ourself. Is looking beyond our personal experience, but then at the same time that outer awareness can trap us as well, because we start living by the opinions, the advice, the rules, the expectations of people outside of us, which I think is both needed, because that is wholeness. The inner and the outer awareness is whole, complete awareness of what we're conscious of and what we're unconscious of. And that is the game. That is the game that we play. And to liberate ourselves from a state of being that isn't serving us or those that we love, our communities, our environment, those types of things, allows us first to witness some of our habits that are limiting. They could be destructive to our health, maybe mental health, maybe emotionally, maybe to our relationships. But that pain is what helps us awaken to a new reality, because eventually, hopefully, we get to a point where we're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and we decide, which is a choice, to grow beyond what we believe is possible. And that part is kind of challenging, because even our imagination comes from a level of our awareness, right? And that's where we have to go beyond the observation of our thoughts and our feelings. Sometimes I say get grounded into your physical senses. However, those five senses can also trap us into a reality where we believe it's that way because that's what we're experiencing in the moment. And so our egoic identification can say, see, look, it's like that. It's exactly like this. It's always been like this. It's always going to be like that. People are going to do this, or you're always going to be, here or whatever. And that's part of our self-preservation in some way. But again, that's an identity. When we know our authentic truth, our true self, it goes beyond the character of our physical life. It goes beyond our identities. It goes beyond our awarenesses. It goes beyond our imaginations. It goes beyond the stories. And that's the tough part of breaking out of the matrix, right? Because a lot of times what we'll do is we'll create we'll create a new reality or a new character that we want to be, or how we want to be, or how we want to live. We create new habits and routines, and even new relationships that support that type of life or that type of lifestyle. And it isn't until later on through these experiences that we realize that we're recreating a lot of the same challenges that we've had in life, just we're experiencing it in a different way, maybe with different people, or those types of things. So there are levels, I guess, the mind could say, to the awakening process. It's not awakening to um, what we believe awakening to. Usually the enlightenment process is very painful, because it's separating us from unconscious attachments. And this can be very triggering, and this can be very scary, and especially to the mind, right? And we'll be trying to make sense of things because maybe our environment is not stressful or chaotic, but we feel a heightened sense of nervousness or anxiety, which could also be labeled as excitement, depending on how you choose to perceive it. And that's kind of where the individual game comes from. And through communication and unity, with open and vulnerable sharing, we can move past those paradigms that have kept us stuck. Abandonment issues, which I've openly talked about, my level of abandonment and betrayal issues that I've experienced in the past. The opposite of that is connection. When I understand that it's the connections that I have within myself, and the connections that I have within spirit, and the connections that I have in other people and other lives, it's that connection that cannot be destroyed or abandoned. Maybe it will change because it's a living thing, and love is a choice, not a feeling. We can't fall out of love with somebody if we genuinely love them, because it's a choice to love them, which means to accept them, to appreciate them, to allow them the space and the grace and the understanding, compassion to explore what it means to be them in our relationships. Now, if somebody is refusing to grow or refusing to see a perspective or something like that, then those relationships may be challenging, and maybe we need to create a further distance in our current reality, our current timeline, because the frequencies of those timelines are just way out of whack. When you're trying to get sober, when you're trying to do something outside of your familiar, right, your family, or your conditional friends and those types of things, when you try to grow out of that, a lot of times you'll be met with resistance, because unconsciously what happens is we're afraid of being left behind, of being alone, because as self-sufficient as we think we are and we want to be, if something was to happen to us, to where we were sick, to where we were injured, those types of things, we would need the assistance of other people to help maintain the quality of our life. And that is the truth in all of nature. Everything is interdependent on each other. If the worms and the microbes and the bees and all the different things that help create our nature, if one of them goes away, it creates a disbalance within our natural environment. Now, some things are more important than others, like bees and pollinators. We need their help to help pollinate the plants, to help produce the fruits. Now, we can do this if we are cultivating our own garden. We can self-pollinate. We can go out there with feathers or Q-tips or whatever, and pollinate plants. I know I've done that, but I also have been witness to and experienced that process happening naturally without my assistance, because that's the natural flow, the natural order of things. Now, that in itself can probably be considered a form of a matrix, right? Natural law could be a matrix. And I think it's impossible to break a universal law. However, you can circumvent it, like the law of gravity and the law of lift. So there are these levels that you can work with that can help you overcome those things. And I think that's where we've evolved as human beings past, our animal brothers and sisters. The beautiful thing about, a deer, for example, is, it could be grazing and all of a sudden it feels the presence of a coyote or something like that, and it's going to take off and it's going to run. And, all the same hormones and chemicals and all those different things are going to be released within that deer as if we were being chased by a coyote. The only difference is once the deer is out of danger, it's going to go back into that harmonious neutral state, and it's going to just go grazing grass again and doing what the deer does. What we do as humans is we hold a mental story of it, of either what happened, like, I can't believe that just happened. Oh my God, I was just chased by a coyote, da 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 da. And we're going to hang on to that energy, that frequency, which is going to continue to create stress in our nervous system, right? Or we're going to go, oh my God, what if that could happen again? What if another, and that is going to produce the same amount of anxious, fearful energy as if we were actually going through the experience. Now, this is the teachings of the West, and the beautiful thing about the time that we're in, this place of consciousness that we're humans are experiencing right now, is a unification of all awarenesses from the East, from the West, to the North, to the South. And what that's allowing us to do is find wholeness within the masculine and feminine energies that we would call duality, right? The seen and the unseen, the felt and the sensed, the form and the formless. But the reality of it is it's all light, it's all information in various different degrees. So breaking free of the matrix for me, and what's helped me get to where I am, whether, I don't consider myself an expert. I consider myself someone that has awareness, that likes to be curious about things, to reflect upon things, because I'm where I am in this moment. Next week, when we broadcast again live, I'm going to be a completely different person. There's going to be similarities because that's my true self. As long as I'm not defining it and saying I am this, that, or the other, because once we create those containers, that's when we start to believe them, and we stop looking for ways where we're not being that. There's so much content out there. There's so many people out there telling you this is the way life should be. These are the way your relationship should be. This is the way that you're supposed to be. This is the way that other people are going to be, should be. All those teachings, all that content, right? All the stories is what's creating the division in our humanity, because we're all trying to live by different rules by the way we perceive them. And that's why, if we go back to the golden rule, for example, and that can be found in most spiritualities and most religions and business and science and those types of things. Maybe not so much science, but definitely in relating with other life forms, right? Treat others as you wish to be treated. This was a concept that I taught my son early on in life, When he got bullied, I'd ask him, "Is that how you want to treat others?" And he said, "Well, no." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because it doesn't feel good." Absolutely. When you're receiving that energy, it doesn't feel good. When you're being blamed, when you're being shamed, when you're being projected upon, when you're all those things, it doesn't feel good. A lot of times it triggers our pain body. So we can get angry and we can be expressive and try, again, a level of self-protection. See, I'm very blessed to have gotten to have a lot of these experiences where I've done it to other people I cared about, what either consciously or unconsciously, and then I've had it done onto me, and that was the give and the receive. The give and the take. I got a taste of my own medicine, and I woke up to a new way of how I wanted to be, how I wanted to treat others, how I wanted to be treated. So if I don't treat others that way, then how could I hope that they would treat me that way? If I'm not treating someone kindly or with love or with compassion or with understanding or with grace or giving, space or whatever, how could I expect them to do the same for me? I can't. I can't expect even if I do. Because the level that someone's able to give is the amount of work that they've been able to cultivate all these things. And so the matrix is stepping out of these rules and coming from within, right? How do I want to feel? How do I want to share those feelings with others? How do I want to think? How do I want to share those thoughts with others? How do I want to be? How do I want to share that being with other people? And those are the three levels, right? Mind, heart, body. And when we come from this place of centeredness, not self-centeredness necessarily. Self-centeredness doesn't want to necessarily look at other people's perspectives. I've had people tell me, someone called them a name or something like that, and they just was like, okay, thank you, and moved on. And I said, well, did you look into why they were calling you that? Could you see from their perspective of why they felt justified in labeling you that way? And maybe you don't see it like that, but maybe they did, and that awareness could be a breadcrumb for your higher evolution. Rhonda, hey, how you doing? Thanks for commenting. What do you think the number one thing is that we can? All right, pull this up. That we can do not to project onto others, as we were all at different levels of healing. What can that look like? I know it starts with a deep commitment for change. Absolutely. And I think what happens, and I know you and I have talked a lot about this, right? And it's realizing that the projection is happening, and in that energy, then take conscious control of that energy that will take us down that road of the projection and the blame and the shame and the separating, right? Self-protection. But allowing it to come up, but then managing it to another way, acknowledging that, hey, I'm sorry I raised my voice because I was feeling defensive or I wasn't, those types of things after the time that has happened. Like, I think those are the ways that we can consciously as ourselves integrate it into our lives. It's neuroscience teaches us that if we are in what we would label an angry emotional state, but instead of raging and allowing those emotions just to overtake us, but we take those and we channel them in a healthier way. You know, we breathe and we ground in the nature, that kind of thing. It's going to help us come back to center, because our natural state is harmony. Our natural state is homeostasis. And so the challenge that we have is a lot of times we don't allow our higher self, our natural state, to come back into homeostasis, because our ego is stuck in a story or a filter where of a perspective of why it was right or why it was wrong. And the reality of it is it's both and, right? In the moment it has a consequence, but if it's left alone, it's going to continue to have consequences. So I think it's about realizing in the time of the mind, which is beyond the present, something happened. That's an acknowledgement, an appreciation that it was what it was and it wasn't any worse than it was. And then an allowance to shift that energy and say, okay, when I start feeling these things again, when I start thinking these ways again, that's my cue that I have to tune in and consciously redirect my energy into the higher state of what we desire to be, because that's still an ego. As we all say, perfectly imperfect in this walk, and sometimes you're both. Well, you're always both, because there's always room to grow. There's always room to evolve. There's always room to expand. And when we're humbled by life experiences, it makes it a little bit easier to see where we have growth to do, right? And we're not seeing it through this lens of arrogance of, we believe that we're better than this, that, or the other. And we don't need to change because we like who we are, even though we're harming ourselves, other people, the planet, those types of things. There's room for growth. So acknowledging the growth, understanding that this moment has come to help heal us, to help expand us, to evolve us, and there is nothing wrong with what happened. It's what we choose to do with it after that it happens that shows the truth in our character, I guess. So thanks for that, Rhonda. I appreciate that comment.
Chris, can you hear me?
Hey, Larkin, how are you?
I'm great. I'm dying to get into this comment. I could spend 8 hours on it. Great question. It is a great question. And what I'd like to do, if you don't mind, is I'd like to break down the question itself.
Absolutely, go for it.
How the question is being asked, and ask the audience to look at what's meant in each section of the question and what that can actually tell you about yourself and your perspective when you're asking it. Now, I'm letting my dogs out, so hopefully, whoops, hold on, gate's open. Wait, give me a second. I didn't know the gate was open. Oh God.
Oops.
I was painting the fence. I didn't know. Doesn't close. It's fine. Okay. Can't even get close. I'll just sit here. Okay. Oh, I'll keep quick. I'll just summarize it. But the remains. Let's see here. Wait a minute. I'll put the question back there. Okay. So first of all, I would say the first part is the number one thing you can do to not project onto others. And I would just say awareness. I'm just going to go with awareness, which you already mentioned, Chris. Because our projection is a lack of awareness of ourselves. And as we become more conscious and more aware and more free of our egoic selves, we become aware of that. But we usually become aware of that through a lot of pain, right? Through a lot of struggle and suffering, through a lot of reactions by other people. Life coming back at us is ways we don't like and understand. And when we do that, when we project, we get that type of life that's confusing, that we don't understand. We get responses from others that we don't like, that doesn't make sense. So for that first part of the question, I would definitely say awareness. And then the next section says, as we are all at different levels of healing, I would look into the perspective too of healing. For me, reading that question means, and you can agree with this or disagree with this, but I'm being devil's advocate here. I'm really breaking this down. If you really break that down, that question indicates that we're all in a place of suffering and we're all needing to heal. We can look at it that way, or we can look at it as the fact that we're here in this world of duality to experience these challenges, that it's a process. We don't have to look at ourselves. The ego loves to say we're all wounded and we all need healing. Okay, that's fine. That can be your perspective of your story. But how about shifting the narrative and the terms that we use? How about saying I'm an eternal conscious soul who's chose to come here with the other souls that have chosen to participate in my life with me or my life experience with me. And because of my egoic existence, I've been allowed to have these challenges. We can look at it as we have to heal from that, or we can just look at it as I need to wake up and remember who I am. Now, for you guys, you might say it's the same thing, but to the perspective, it's drastically different. If I look at all the situations in my life that are challenges, and I say, I've got to heal, I've got to heal, I've got to heal, I've got to heal, I start to feel like a victim. I start to feel weak and incapable. I don't feel, for me at least, always looking at things as needing to heal. It's a beautiful word, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. What I'm asking you to do is wiggle your way around that perspective, because we manifest who and what our story is already. We manifest different versions of who and what we already believe our experience, our lives, ourselves to be. And you can say, but I know I'm eternal soul arc, and I know I'm not just who I am right now as a person. But you've got that 95% of your subconscious mind you're unaware of. See, that's the part that in the first part of your question, you have to bring into your existence. So, or you have to bring into your awareness. So when you tuck in your pocket also that story of, oh yeah, I'm aware of that. But the question is that really what you're believing and acting on? Because what we manifest is what we believe now. So if we're saying, oh, I'm on this healing journey, you will be in a mindset, in a story of I'm healing for the rest of your life. And that's okay. What I'm doing is I'm inviting you to completely switch your perspective and your language as to how you look at what your journey is. And then last part, I know it starts with a deep commitment to change. I'm going to be devil's advocate there as well. What if you don't? What if you ditch the whole need and desire to change and you just simply focus on remembering who you are as a soul? Deeper than the egoic mind, which is the only aspect of you all that has a story. The other part is outside of time and space. It's awareness. And I'm very practical with these things, guys. I believe that our spirituality and our healing and our consciousness and all that stuff needs to be very practically applied, because you're here in this life now. And every little thing you do in this life actually does matter. You'll see when you get to the other side, it actually does matter. And I agree with Rhonda's statement. I always tell my clients, my coaching clients, you really have to be committed to yourself. But first of all, it's not just change, it's transformation. Change, you can revert back. You have to change lots of little habits in order to create a transformation. But the commitment has to be to the transformation, or just ditch that whole idea of needing to change and transform.
because life will always change. It will always evolve. If you commit to remembering who you are as a soul, if you commit to waking up, if you commit to stripping away all the crap just by doing absolutely nothing except gratitude and being aware of your own thoughts and choices, the transformation can happen on its own. You don't even have to be committed. Because you see, again, when you're committed to change, so many people get caught in a life story of, I have to train. And I just want you all to remember, when you're stuck in the story of, I need to heal, I need to change, I need to transform, that becomes your story. And so instead of you healing, transforming, and changing, you get caught in the soap opera of that idea. So I want to just rock the boat a little bit and throw these things out there, not just for Rhonda, but for everyone, because it's such an awesome question. Go beyond that. Go deeper than what the ego's telling you. Recognize what your thoughts and beliefs are right now, because whatever it is your story is now is what you're creating for your future story. Even if it's, oh, I envision this for my future. Okay, that's fine. But that's you having a story where you're here now and you envision this other thing. If you're you have to be the thing you want to manifest. And that means conscious. It's really all it is. And you don't have to take my word for it. You can look at Buddha. You can look at Jesus. You can look at what all the great masters taught. And it's really about quieting the mind, giving a place for awareness to blossom, remembering who you are as a soul from a place of gratitude. And everything Chris and I talk about, no matter how wordy it is, it leads back to those things. Anyway, Rhonda, thank you for this amazing question, because I think it serves everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, Kim. Welcome.
Kim. I agree with what Kim's gotten to say too, which it's challenging, right? Because there's a lot of unpacking to do.
Oh, yes. Know thyself. Yes.
Yeah. And then once you think you got yourself figured out, then you realize that you've been entirely another way as well.
You're welcome, Rhonda. Thank you for being here. I'm looking at what Kim's writing. Yes, the observer behind your thoughts. And I just want to remind everybody, my clients, I require them to read The Power of Now and Get Stillness Speaks from Eckhart Tolle. The reason, because as wonderful as books are and everything else is, I love his book because it was written after his conscious awakening. And so we have this modern day framework that he can position us in modern day understanding, modern day terminology, modern day understanding as a human being. But it was his consciousness written to your consciousness. So that's one of the things that really helped me over 25 years ago. I read that book. I've read that book nonstop for over 25 years now. And it's because it allows me to have a connection with a human being that's consciousness can purely relate to my consciousness. So I can step out of the world of interacting and talking with people. And my eternal conscious soul can sit down and read a book. It can speak to someone who's awake and outside of space and time, the way the world would be if we were all awake. And so, because it's hard, guys, I mean, it's you guys get off of here and think about it. You go back to your regular everyday world of interacting with other people. And when you're interacting with other people, you're interacting with their souls, but you're also interacting with their egoic selves. You're always going through that mask of the egoic self with people. And so reading this book gives my clients the opportunity, even if it's 5 minutes a day, I just tell them 5 minutes a day. It gives you the opportunity, and eventually that creeps in. For me, I found clips and I put it, if this all helps you all, sorry, Chris, I put it on index cards and I was carrying it in my purse. And I had just gone through a bad breakup at the time. I was totally broke. I was living in a house with all my animals that I loved. I was worried about my family. Work was a struggle. There was a lot of politics going on. Sorry, there's a loud construction truck coming through here. And, you know, I'm not a person that typically panics, but I was just nervous. I was just a nervous wreck all the time. And so I put these quotes that resonated with me from The Power of Now on these cards, and I carried them around in my purse. And I used them for what I now call a turnaround. And I would come back around and I stop. If I was at work, I'd go into the bathroom, or I'd stop in the corner. I was a gymnastics coach at the time. Or I'd sit in my car and I would just pick the one that resonated with me and I would read it until I got back to the state that reading that phrase got me to consciously. So now I tell my clients, make your consciousness your number one priority, your state of consciousness. And that's how I trained myself. And I still love the cards, but I don't carry them around anymore. I probably should. Just because it's an important reminder to stop throughout the day and stop being a thinker and being a conscious being that you are. Because that's what you guys are here to be. You're here to be your consciousness in physical form.
Yeah. Okay, we're done. What more can be said?
Well, and that's a good response, Chris. Thank you. Because really, I try very hard to simplify this stuff.
Right.
It's really not this complicated, guys. I mean, this is why people go off and they, become Buddhist monks. This is why they go isolate themselves in ministries and things like that. Because the world is so distracting. And this is why, like with my coaching clients, I really get on them, because a lot of them will start coaching and then, they find an excuse not to. I mean, I'm going through this right now with clients. It's great at first. Everybody wants immediate gratification. And once they get it, they're out the door. Mm-hmm. And so Rhonda was talking about that commitment. Yeah. But it's a commitment of choice and lifestyle. You can't just think about it, which is what most people do. They just think about it, and that's why coaching, or when people go into a monastery or whatever, they're committing to a system or a way of life that can help support that. It's very, very difficult. I was able to do it.
Right. Well, and
I mean, it was 24/7 for years. It was a healthy obsession. You there, Chris?
Yeah, I'm there.
Sorry, go ahead. You cut it.
You were breaking in and out, so I was just waiting.
Yeah, I'm out in the yard.
That's absolutely true. It's easy to maintain a peaceful, harmonious vibration of self, right? When you meditate for 4 or 5 hours a day, you don't really leave your house, but once or twice a week. There's less things poking at you. You don't watch the news. You don't watch, those types of things. So it is easier to be in that peaceful state. But the true test of our practice is to go into those places of chaos and not lose our center. From my own experience, when I was first on this journey in 2012, 2013, I was meditating 4 or 5 hours a day. I was reading, an hour or two a day of different books. Eckhart Tolle was one of my main teachers. I also was really into, practical books like Think and Grow Rich and things like that, because it helped me think about how I could apply these these ways of presence, a spiritual way of living in a practical way. I saw through my own experience where my grandparents were fulfilling their spiritual journey by the professions that they chose to experience in their life, and they were there to serve, their company, serve their employees, serve the community. Most of my family comes from the healthcare industry, or was in the healthcare industry. So, it is interesting for me to go back out into the world and into environments that I have absolutely little to no control over, the external world, and see how I can consciously control my inner center. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I'm letting that process. So I will say to everyone that you make a really good point there, because the word control, I think that's very interesting, because here's the thing, guys. Sorry, I've been running around with my my dog's outside. I'm trying to get, I don't know if, let me take, there we go. So self-control, guys, is really, really, really key. I'm going to go back to, I come from a long line of martial arts here. And one of the things that, like, the Buddhist monks were also martial artists. And so, when we did our Shaolin training, it was both the healing aspect and the physical aspect, because the martial aspect, because this is what the monks had to do to protect their temples. They were warriors. And what that has is an element of tremendous self-control. When people partake in something of extreme physical training, there's a lot of self-control that it has to happen there. And so many of them, the reason they had the wisdom and the patience and the self-control they had is because what you practice on the mat, you practice in real life in your actions.
Mm-hmm.
My Aikido instructors, especially the older ones that have been doing this, they're in their 80s or 90s now, and they've been doing this forever. I mean, it's sort of like walking into an old Buddhist temple and talking to a monk. I mean, it's incredible. But through discipline, we sharpen the mind and we become more observant of the mind. And this is a natural process, actually, for us to do. I have a long list of grievances of the way our Western world is conducting life, because we're dumbing down on purpose, and we're lowering our standards, and we're removing self-discipline. I'm not talking like, let's all be rigid, the way many of us think of German culture type of rigidity. I'm just talking about self-control. And we don't do this with our children either. My mom had a preschool, and the children that would come from the European countries, especially like Sweden and Switzerland and places like that, they were little 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6-year-olds, and the parents would take them everywhere. They were polite and quiet in the restaurants. They acted like little mini adults. They were, when they go out and play, I mean, it was amazing to watch them versus the American children. And the American children, and many of you may have kids and that's fine. But our mentality over here is, they're kids. They're meant to be loud. They're meant to be mean. They're meant to do what they're not supposed to do. If you have that expectation, that is the expectation they will have. And they will live accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
They're kids. Let them have what they want. But I come from a family of teachers. And in graduate school for psychology, we learned this too, child development. You learn that the inner, when children have an outer structure, that becomes their inner structure as adults. And so if there is no structure, if there is no, which they can change and break that structure as adults, but it's constructing their mind in a way to have an order of thinking. And, it's like people are like, oh, break the rules, do whatever you want. I'm un-American. I've got a right to do what I want. The problem with that is it comes back to bite you and others in the ass.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to have your fundamental freedoms and do what you want. It's not okay to do what you want, whatever you want, because it steps on other people's toes. And I know it sounds like I'm getting off topic, but I'm really not. Because there are many of cultures around the world where the children are taught self-discipline. And what that does is that builds into confidence as adults, because they have a framework that if they want to change that framework, they can change it. But it also gives children security. When there's a framework, you have security where you can get to know who you are as a person, as a kid. And then as you grow up, you know who you are because you had a framework with which you didn't have to impose those things on yourself because you don't know what they are as children. Then as an adult, you can go do whatever you want, travel around the world, make up your own rules, go for it. But you have a structure with which you can do that from. If you don't have a stable structure, which a lot of American children do not have now, they're not as mature. When they grow up and they still don't have a mentality that they can provide what they need in their own lives because they never had the structure. So they spend their entire lives rebelling, retaliating, trying to figure out who the heck they are. So when we find a way to implement self-control, whether it's a yoga class or a martial arts class, or we're practicing true meditation, or we're implementing an hour of silence a day for ourselves, which can take a lot of self-control if you're not used to it. This actually, what are you really controlling is what I'm getting at here. You're really applying control to the mind. And the mind is the egoic projection of you. You see, the mind is not who you really are. It's the bridge between the physical brain you need to keep your brain functioning neurologically and your eternal conscious wisdom, your eternal conscious soul that never dies. So the question is, who's going to run it? Is your brain, are you going to be running just on what your egoic self, that projection, wants to use your brain for? Or is your consciousness going to insert itself and say, I'm the driver here, the observer behind the seat, I'm the driver. The brain allows it to happen, and my mind is my vehicle to be here in this world. In order to do that, my friends, you have to establish self-control. And that's why a lot of you are in the situations where you are. You're going to have to apply self-control to overcome addiction or overcome relationship habits or overcome daily habits or to create change and transformation. That's all required. You see, for you guys to do anything you want and manifest intentionally, you must, I don't want to say gain control of the mind. You must learn to take your power back from your mind back into the seat of that conscious observer. And if you don't do that, that 95% of your mind that you're unaware of will rule your life. And that's all this is about. Comfort and self-indulgence. Yeah, well, but it's not, there's nothing really to trade, Kim. That's the thing. The mind thinks it is, right, Chris?
Mm-hmm.
The mind.
Well, it's a choice, right? Either way. So there is a trade-off because you have to make one choice makes another, but
it's not really a trade-off.
Right.
It seems like a trade-off in the beginning. It seems like a trade-off.
Right.
You're not. That's nothing compared to what you get with the freedom of the mind on the other side. So that comfort and indulgence is an illusion. And indulgence is absolute, I would say, you know, be careful of that. Because behind the discipline and the hard work is the greatest fulfillment and joy you can possibly imagine.
Mm.
And so, you know, that's an illusory point. I'm glad you worked that up. And I think this is another point. You know, this is our American mindset. You know, it doesn't have to be. And you're right, accountability has been annihilated. But it still exists. It's just hiding.
Mm-hmm.
It's hiding in people like myself, maybe people like you guys. You know, it's the massive brainwashing. And the point is, guys, is, you know, we're not raised to be responsible for our own thoughts and actions anymore. But we can't blame that. We can't just say, I mean, you got good points here, Kim, and I agree with you, but we can't dump it on society or government or education either. You are responsible for you.
We're
And
a part of that.
And now that you're aware of this, yes, it's, you know, they're connected. Now that you're aware of this, what are you guys going to do about that? You have to choose what your gatekeeper is. You know, you're the gatekeeper of what you watch and what you listen to and who you talk to. Do your research. This is why science is so important, guys. You can't be brainwashed with science. This is why people doing the brainwashing are anti-science.
True science, not the dogma of science. You know, the scientific process of, because it's always evolving.
Well, but like biology,
right?
Quantum physics. I mean,
right.
this is science. This is what I'm talking about. Geology. If you go to your doctor and your doctor says, you know, well, you have the cold virus, or you have the flu virus, we just ran the test, or you're anemic, we just ran the test. Look in the microscope, see what your blood cell count is. And you're like, yeah, okay, be anemic. I know lots of people that do that. You know, so this isn't to get into debate about all that, but the point is you guys are responsible for your mind. And, you know, it's your choice to be the gatekeeper or not of what's happening. These are good things. Yes. Yeah, that's what Chris and I were referring to. Mm-hmm. That's why we were talking about the coaching that's where the coaching can help. And I think that's why, I don't know, Chris, what do you think? I think that's why a lot of people, when they start with a therapist or a psychologist or a coach or anything really, why a lot of times why they back out.
Right.
You don't want that accountability. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, like I've always said for myself, it's easy to let myself, you know, not hit a certain bar, you know, or hold myself accountable to a certain thing, because something else comes up and, you know, I feel like that has to be taken care of first or whatever. But it's hard to do that with somebody else holding that torch, and even kind of I can't say depending on, because like as a coach, we're not dependent on our clients doing what it is they say they're going to do. But at the same time, it is a reflection of our coaching. It is. So we do have a valued interest in people doing and moving through the processes of things. But I think accountability is huge. And, you know, I mean, even when we can look back and, you know, say, I didn't mean to be that way, or I didn't mean to show up that way. I'm sorry. And really work on the acceptance that is a part of who we've been, and then work on cultivating new ways of establishing more healthier ways and habits to express ourselves, you know, because it is very easy especially those of us that are, at levels of empathy, to where we feel someone's anger. A lot of times I've reacted out of anger, and I'm like, well, I wasn't angry till you got angry with me. Like, so what happened there? Like, how did I get taken into anger when I was quite happy and content having my cup of coffee, just relaxing. But when you came in and started yelling at me with anger and upset, I felt that and reacted out of that. That's still on me. That's still my responsibility. But once that's been expelled, I don't know if you've had this experience, Larkin, or anyone else, but once you've kind of gone through like 5 minutes of that and you realize, like, wait, that's not my emotion. Like, you don't feel it anymore. Like it goes away. It's like acknowledged, and there's no root, where something that was within me was a little deeply rooted. So it stayed in my conscious awareness a little longer.
I want to mention here that, guys, a lot of this, like what Chris just mentioned, especially if you're an empath, there's a simple solution here. Just stop taking anything personally. See, if you don't take anything personally, you're not going to get upset. Think about it. Any and every time you've been angry or had your feelings hurt, despite what it is, you could have a zillion excuses. You're taking it personally. It's not ever about you. If you did the wrong thing, say, yeah, I'm sorry. I don't think I was really right in that. You still don't have to take it personally, right, whether you did it or not. And this is a great level of self-awareness. I want you guys to look at these things that maybe we look at as being grit or grueling or hard, and instead look at them as freedom. When you choose not to take something personally, as difficult as it might be initially, you're free. When you choose not to take something personally, you're free. When you choose not to have your feelings hurt, you're free. When you choose not to care if someone's blaming you because you're wondering, where are they coming from? Instead of, what did I do wrong? How can I defend myself? You don't ever need to defend yourself. Just stop taking things personally. Try it for just the weekend. Tell yourself it's just a weekend or just 24 hours or just the week. Try it and see what happens. What you're going to find is that you feel liberated. You feel less of a burden. And if you really think about it, the same outcome happens, whether you get into it with somebody or whether you don't. On the other side, it still turns out okay. Only you go through a lot more. If you're arguing with a family member, chances are you're going to sit down with them at dinner or go to that Friday ball game or whatever anyway. You're both going to end up in the same place with each other. Not always, but usually for the most part on a daily basis. So save yourself the anguish. Just try it is all I'm inviting you guys to do. Just test it out and try it. And instead of getting into it or taking it personally, ask yourself, what am I supposed to be learning here? What was my part in this? What is this an opportunity for? Because every obstacle is an opportunity. What is this an opportunity for? And see what starts to happen. And when you do that, instead of allowing your to get all riled up, you start to see that there's a whole nother reality going on. Instead of both people arguing and then going off being like, well, I was right and she was it. And what do? We carry it off with us, don't we? We carry it off with us. We tell other people. We get other people to validate us and back up our side, tell us we're right and we're the victim. That's BS. That is BS. And you know who we're doing it to? We're not doing it to the other person because they think we're wrong. They've got their own little support group. we're doing it to ourselves. We're torturing ourselves. We're doing it vibrationally. And then what does it fall into? Well, we went back earlier in this broadcast. It's part of your story. So-and-so always picks on me. They always have. They'll never understand. What if you were like, it's okay. Maybe they understand. Maybe they don't. It's okay if they don't. Who cares? I'll tell you who cares. Your ego. That's it's here to care too.
But God, we only have this one life, Larkin, and we got it.
Yeah, that's right. Because your ego only does have this one life.
Yep, exactly.
And so to your ego, my friends, it really is life and death. It's a 2-year-old struggling for life and death.
Mm-hmm.
That's
and
why
not 2 anymore.
That's why your consciousness has to be the parent,
right,
in charge of what's happening, and the choice is yours. It's always yours.
Yep. And I know I can act like a toddler throwing the tantrum like the best of them, but you know, and later you just look back and go, all this work, and it still happens, and it's like, okay, thank you. That just means that there's more there, and awesome, like, okay, all right, well, I'll sit with some more of this stuff. Okay. I thought that last, little glip of my childhood that I went in and, rewired whatever, was the last one. No, it's never,
But guys, the practice works. And, and I personally would encourage, instead of going back over all your stuff, maybe some people need to. Chris is talking about a totally different thing, but like, I like to look at how I want to feel and how I feel as a soul.
Mm.
And when I focus on that, you see, you make that a habit and a pattern the more you practice it. So yes, you have to practice it in everyday life. Life gives you plenty of opportunities, but you'll start to notice that feeling good is familiar, because on the other side, there is no conflict. Your soul does not know conflict. Only your egoic self knows conflict. See? So if you get back down to that, and that's what you're working off of, it makes things so very different. So very different. And that's why it's okay to cycle. If people are like, oh man, I still have this with me, that's okay. Mm-hmm. Let it go. You're human. But you'll notice as you begin to practice these things, they're shorter lived. You're less reactive. You have a greater perspective on things. It's easier to respond and know what to do. The more you are still and silent and connecting with that observer behind your thoughts and using productive and helpful self-talk, and you're aware, just be aware of that self-talk. I mean, like I said, this is where a couple of my new clients fell off the bandwagon. Because why? Because everybody's expecting something bigger. Oh, it has to be, no. Week 1 of my coaching clients is just observe your thoughts, and I give them a technique to do it. Mm-hmm. That's it. Because without awareness, you got nothing. Nothing. You have to have awareness to be able to separate yourself from your made-up story. And so when you start, like if you guys were to start coaching with Chris or I, what you'd find is you're going to be going, that's all? That's all we're doing this week? Just that? Too simple. They can't know what they're doing. It's not difficult enough. It's not complicated enough.
Where's my workbook?
Not supposed to be. That's the whole point. We're doing what we're doing is to simplify it for you. Mm-hmm. To simplify it. To break it down. Ego makes things complicated. Consciousness keeps things simple. If it's confusing, chaotic, complicated, it's egoic self. If it's simple and easy and clear, it's consciousness. So it's about sifting through that. Which reminds me, Chris, before we get off, I think we should remind everybody that we do discovery calls. So you guys can schedule a discovery call with either one of us. If you go to my psychic medium page on here, I actually made a whole video about a discovery call, and Chris is the same. I mean, you can listen to my discovery call and learn about what it is. And I don't know how Chris does it. I say 20 minutes I do 5 20-minute free ones a week. Chris can explain how he does his, but the bottom line is to help people get some clarity and to know what steps to take next. It doesn't necessarily mean we're saying work with us. We may invite you to work with one of us. I may say, hey, I think you need to work with Chris and do this healing work first. Then come over and do this and that with me, or, go work with Chris or go work with Susie. I may think maybe one of my courses is right for you. But just please know that this is available for you guys, that we give you freely of our own time. And we're working on projects as well, but this is available for you guys for free to get some direction. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Rhonda. What did you want to share about your discovery calls, Chris, so they know what that is, or anything else you want to share?
I mean, as far as the discovery calls, I mean, I'll do as many as are necessary through the week. They're about 30 minutes. And it's just a snapshot of where you are, where you think you need to go, and then some recommendations to help bridge that gap, to make it, value driven for both of us. Right. Cause that's where the worth is, right? Like if it's just a discovery call where, I'm selling my healing services or coaching or, a program or anything like that, to me, that doesn't add value to why you call. So, yeah. There is the advice aspect of it, but the idea is just to bridge the gap between the known and the unknown and see if it's the right fit to walk forward together, or somebody else that we know in our network.
Yeah. And that's the whole point. That's why I've emphasized that, guys, because it is not a sales call. Although we may invite you to work with us. You can say yay or nay. And if you say nay, we'll give you a different alternative. Right. I have people usually that get on and actually ask to work with me. They literally, the last 2 weeks of clients I've had have all literally just been like, but at the end, I'm like, well, how can I help you? What can I do for you? And they're going, what do you want from me? I'm saying, and they're like, but I just wanted to work with you. So that's fine too. But the bottom line is we see people spinning their wheels and or coming to lives or coming to my free readings online. And that's people's comfort zones. The real question is, what are you going to do next? Are you going to spend the next 20 years going to free online stuff, which is great. Maybe you're getting enough out of that. But where is your part in this? And are you clear in that? You're the one with the free will and the power of choice. We reclaim our power through our power of choice. That's how you stand in your power. And do you know how you're giving it away? Do you know how to reclaim that power? Most people don't. So we want people to have clarity. We want you to get off the call with clarity as to what you need to do next so you stop spinning your wheels. And that's really the point of the discovery call, to help you get going in the next aspect of the spiral of your direction. Okay. And we thank you, Rhonda and Kim. Also, everyone that listens on the rebroadcast, you guys, if you're here and you listened all the way through, please leave us a heart in the comments and make sure that you like it. That means a lot, especially on YouTube. Quick FYI, I still can't go live. It's been 3 weeks now. I don't think Facebook is even aware of it. I cannot go live, but I'm still doing the same amount of lives. So if you guys like my work, just please make sure you follow my YouTube page, my individual one that's posted in here. You can catch all my lives on there until and if and whenever I get Facebook back. But I still can do everything else on Facebook. I can do shorts.
There you go.
Yeah. 90 seconds.
You could do rebroadcast probably.
I just share these on there when I'm done, but people mostly come to the lives. So
sure. Thanks again for everybody that's tuned in, that's going to tune in later through the rebroadcast. Thanks for everyone's participations, the comments, the questions. What a wonderful show today. I'm so blessed to be a part of it. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next week, 1 p.m. Bye-bye.